The mysterious night wanderer Lily had always dreamed of going to college. The thought of moving out, meeting new people, and creating a life of her own filled her with excitement. When she finally got her acceptance letter, she spent weeks planning every detail of her move, from the perfect bedding to cute posters for her dorm room. Lily wanted her new space to feel like home. When move-in day arrived, her parents helped her carry boxes up to her small dorm room. It was cozy, with 2 twin beds, 2 desks, and a shared closet. Lily's roommate, Sarah, arrived shortly after. She was a petite girl with short dark hair and a shy smile. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I'm Lily," Lily replied with a warm smile. "Nice to meet you." The 2 girls unpacked their belongings, occasionally chatting about their hometowns and majors. Lily learned that Sarah was studying biology and hoped to become a veterinarian. She seemed kind but kept to herself most of the time. Lily didn't mind. She thought Sarah's quiet nature would suit her well, since Lily liked to focus on her studies. The first few weeks went by smoothly. Classes kept Lily busy, and she was adjusting to her new routine. Sarah remained reserved but polite. They occasionally shared meals or exchanged small talk, but Sarah often spent long hours in the library or disappeared to who knows where. One night, after an exhausting day of classes and assignments, Lily crawled into bed and fell asleep almost instantly. Sometime in the middle of the night, she woke up to a strange sound. It was soft but persistent, like someone shuffling their feet on the carpet. Groggy, Lily turned her head toward the noise and froze. Standing at the foot of her bed was Sarah. The dim glow of the streetlight outside barely lit the room, but Lily could see Sarah's outline clearly. She was just standing there, staring at Lily with wide, unblinking eyes. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. "Sarah?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah didn't respond. She didn't move or blink. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah turned around and walked slowly back to her bed. She climbed under the covers as if nothing had happened. Lily lay awake for hours, too scared to close her eyes. Was Sarah sleepwalking? Or was something else going on? By morning, Lily convinced herself it was a one-time incident. Maybe she was just sleepwalking, she told herself. It's not a big deal. But it wasn't a one-time thing. A few nights later, Lily woke up again. This time, Sarah was standing by the window, muttering to herself. Her words were too quiet for Lily to understand, but the sight sent chills down her spine. "Sarah? Are you okay?" Lily asked, her voice shaking. Sarah didn't answer. She stood there for a few more moments before silently walking back to her bed. The next morning, Lily brought it up. "Hey, Sarah, do you remember getting up last night?" Lily asked casually, trying not to sound alarmed. Sarah looked confused. "Getting up? No, I don't think so." "Why?" Lily hesitated. "You were standing by the window. I thought maybe you were sleepwalking." Sarah shrugged. That's weird. I don't remember anything. Sorry if I scared you. Lily forced a smile. It's okay. Just wanted to make sure you were all right. But Sarah's strange behavior continued. Almost every night, Lily would wake up to find Sarah in different parts of the room. Sometimes she was muttering to herself. Other times, she was just standing still, staring into space. Lily's nerves were on edge. She started keeping a flashlight under her pillow and locked her door whenever Sarah wasn't around, even though they shared the room. The tension reached a peak one night when Lily woke up to find Sarah standing inches away from her face. Sarah's eyes were wide, and she was holding a pair of scissors. Lily's scream pierced the silence of the dorm. Sarah blinked and looked down at the scissors in her hand, her expression confused and dazed. "What are you doing?" Lily shouted, scrambling out of bed. Sarah dropped the scissors. I don't know," she mumbled, her voice distant. "I don't remember." Lily didn't wait to hear more. She grabbed her phone and spent the rest of the night locked in the dorm's shared bathroom. The next morning, she packed her things and moved out without saying much to Sarah. The dorm advisor helped her find a temporary room until they could sort things out. A few days later, Lily learned from another student that Sarah had a history of sleep disorders and hadn't been taking her medication. It all started to make sense, but the experience had left Lily shaken. She couldn't bring herself to forgive Sarah, even if it wasn't entirely her fault. From then on, Lily was more careful about who she shared a living space with. She never forgot the eerie nights with Sarah, the mysterious night wanderer who had turned her dorm life into a waking nightmare. The hoarder's nightmare, Jessica had been searching for an affordable place to live for months. After scouring countless listings and dealing with overpriced apartments or rude landlords, she finally found a place that seemed perfect. It was a small but charming two-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of the city. Even better, it came with a potential roommate, Megan, who seemed friendly during their first meeting. Jessica still remembered the first time she toured the apartment. The walls were freshly painted, the kitchen was spotless, and there was plenty of space for her to move around and decorate. Megan had greeted her warmly, offering a cup of coffee as they chatted about their interests and schedules. Jessica had a good feeling about Megan. She seemed responsible, with a steady job and a cheerful demeanor. It felt like a match made in heaven. Excited about her new chapter, Jessica moved in 2 weeks later. At first, everything was great. Megan helped her carry boxes upstairs and even offered to share some of the kitchen supplies she already had. The two spent their first evening as roommates watching a movie and laughing about bad dating stories. Jessica felt like she had found not just a place to live, but also a potential friend. However, it didn't take long for cracks to appear in this perfect arrangement. Jessica began noticing small things that seemed a bit off. For example, Megan would leave her shoes in the middle of the hallway, making it hard for Jessica to get to her room without tripping. The kitchen sink would often be filled with dishes, even though they hadn't cooked anything together. Jessica shrugged it off, thinking Megan might just be a little messy. The first warning signs as the days turned into weeks, Megan's behavior became harder to ignore. It wasn't just shoes in the hallway or dishes in the sink anymore. Piles of laundry started appearing in the living room. Megan would stack empty soda cans on the counter instead of throwing them away. Jessica told herself that it wasn't a big deal. Everyone had their quirks, and maybe Megan just needed a little nudge to keep things tidy. One evening, Jessica decided to have a gentle conversation with Megan about the mess. "Hey, I've noticed the dishes are piling up a bit. Do you think we could try to keep the kitchen a little cleaner?" she asked, keeping her tone light. Megan laughed nervously. "Oh yeah, sorry about that. I've been super busy with work lately. I'll get to it soon." Jessica accepted the explanation and decided to give Megan more time. But the mess didn't improve. In fact, it got worse. Jessica would clean the apartment herself, but within a day or two, Megan's clutter would take over again. Clothes, papers, empty food containers. It felt like Megan had a never-ending supply of stuff to scatter around. Discovering the hoard one weekend, Jessica decided to do a deep clean while Megan was out. She thought it might motivate her roommate to keep the place tidy if everything started fresh. As she worked her way through the apartment, she noticed that one of the hallway closets was jammed shut. Curious, she tugged at the door until it finally opened. What she found inside shocked her. The closet was packed with garbage bags, old newspapers, and random items like broken toys and empty cereal boxes. There were even containers of leftover food that had long since gone bad, their lids barely holding back the smell of rot. Jessica quickly shut the door, her stomach turning. When Megan came home that evening, Jessica confronted her. "Megan, I opened the hallway closet and it's full of trash. What's going on?" Megan looked embarrassed, but quickly brushed it off. "Oh, that's just some stuff I haven't had time to sort through. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it soon." But soon never came. Weeks passed, and the closet remained untouched. Jessica began noticing more alarming things around the apartment. Megan started bringing in bags of items from thrift stores and leaving them unopened in the living room. The dining table disappeared under stacks of magazines, takeout boxes, and random knickknacks. Jessica tried cleaning up as much as she could, but it felt like fighting a losing battle. The bugs arrived one morning. Jessica woke up to find ants crawling on the kitchen counter. She followed their trail to a half-eaten pizza box Megan had left out overnight. Frustrated, Jessica spent hours scrubbing the kitchen and setting traps to get rid of the ants. But the bugs were just the beginning. Soon, Jessica noticed cockroaches scuttling across the floor whenever she turned on the lights. They seemed to be coming from Megan's piles of trash and clutter. Jessica confronted Megan again, this time more firmly. "Megan, the mess is attracting bugs. We need to clean this place up." Megan rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. A few bugs aren't a big deal. Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. She tried to clean up even more, but it became clear that Megan had no intention of changing her behavior. Every time Jessica threw something away, Megan would bring in more junk to replace it. Reaching the breaking point, the final straw came one night when Jessica woke up to a scratching sound in her bedroom. She turned on the light and froze in horror. A rat was sitting on her desk, chewing on a granola bar wrapper. Jessica screamed, and the rat darted through a hole in the wall, back into the living room. Terrified, Jessica inspected the living room and found that Megan had piled trash so high it was spilling over onto the furniture. It was clear that the rat had come from Megan's hoard. Jessica couldn't take it anymore. She packed her belongings that very night and left to stay with a friend. The next day, she called the landlord to report the situation. The landlord came to inspect the apartment and was horrified by what he found. He told Megan she had to clean up immediately or face eviction. But Megan refused to cooperate, insisting that she wasn't doing anything wrong. Eventually, the apartment was deemed unfit for living and was condemned. Jessica found a new place to live, but the experience left her shaken. She realized the importance of carefully vetting future roommates and making sure they shared her standards for cleanliness. The stranger in the house, Mark, was excited to move into a new house with 3 other roommates. It was his first time living away from his parents, and he was looking forward to making new friends and living independently. The house was a cozy 2-story building with enough space for everyone. The 4 of them quickly bonded over shared meals, late-night movies, and discussions about splitting chores. Everything seemed perfect at first. The roommates created a schedule to divide responsibilities. Mark took care of the kitchen. Sarah handled cleaning the common areas. Ben managed the garbage, and Emily looked after the backyard. Everyone respected the schedule, and their home ran smoothly. It felt like they had found the perfect balance. One evening, as Mark was getting ready for bed, he heard a strange noise coming from the attic. At first, he thought it was just the house settling, or maybe a bird on the roof. It sounded like faint footsteps and, occasionally, what seemed like whispers. He dismissed it, telling himself it was his imagination or something harmless. After all, old houses made strange noises, right? A few days later, Mark heard the noises again. This time, it was louder. He decided to ask his roommates if they had noticed anything unusual. When they all gathered in the living room, Mark brought it up casually. "Hey, have any of you heard weird noises coming from the attic? It's probably nothing, but it's kind of creeping me out." Sarah laughed. "Maybe it's just squirrels. They love attics." Ben shrugged. "I haven't heard anything, but I can help you check it out if you're worried." Emily added, "It's probably nothing, Mark. Don't stress about it." Reassured by their responses, Mark decided not to think too much about it. But the noises didn't stop. In fact, they seemed to happen more often. Sometimes late at night, he'd hear faint movements above his room. Other times, it sounded like something was being dragged across the floor. He started to feel uneasy, but he didn't want to bother his roommates again. Maybe he was overreacting. One afternoon, Mark came home early from work. He was surprised to find the house unusually quiet. As he walked toward his room, he noticed something odd. The attic door, which was always closed, was slightly open. His heart raced. He stood frozen, staring at the narrow crack. Curiosity and fear battled inside him, but eventually he decided to take a closer look. Mark grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and slowly climbed the creaky ladder leading to the attic. The air felt colder up there, and the dim light from the small attic window barely illuminated the space. He swept the flashlight around and froze when he saw what was in the corner. There was a small setup, a mattress, some blankets, a few food wrappers, and an empty water bottle. Someone had been living there. Mark's mind raced. Who could it be? How long had they been there? And how had none of them noticed? He quickly climbed down and called his roommates. "You all need to see this," he said, trying to keep calm. Within minutes, Sarah, Ben, and Emily were standing by the attic door. Mark led the way and showed them what he had found. They were shocked. Sarah looked pale, Ben's eyes widened, and Emily gasped. "This is insane," Ben said. "How is this even possible?" They decided to come up with a plan. First, they checked all the windows and doors to make sure they were locked. Then they sat down in the living room to discuss what to do next. "Should we call the police?" Sarah asked. "I mean, whoever it is might still be coming back." "We don't know who it is," Emily said. "But they've been living here without us knowing. That's terrifying." "Let's wait and see if they come back," Ben suggested. "We'll stay up tonight and keep an eye on the attic. If we hear anything, we'll call the police." They all agreed, though Mark felt uneasy about waiting. That night, they stayed up together, sitting quietly in the living room. Hours passed, and nothing happened. Just when they were starting to think they might have scared the person away, they heard a faint creak from the attic. Everyone froze. Mark whispered, "Did you hear that?" The others nodded. They could hear soft footsteps moving above them. Without hesitation, Sarah dialed the police. "There's someone in our attic," she told the operator. Within minutes, the police arrived. They searched the attic and found a man hiding in a corner. He looked disheveled and nervous. When questioned, he admitted that he had been living in the attic for months. He explained that he had found a spare key to the house in the backyard and decided to stay there because he had nowhere else to go. The roommates were horrified. How could someone have been living right above them without their knowledge? The police escorted the man away and took his statement. Before leaving, they advised the roommates to change the locks and take additional security measures. The next day, Mark and his roommates replaced all the locks and installed security cameras around the house. They also made sure to check every corner of the house to ensure there were no other surprises. Despite these changes, Mark couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Every creak and noise made him jump. He started sleeping with his bedroom door locked and avoided being alone in the house. The experience had shaken him deeply. After a few weeks, he decided he couldn't stay there anymore. "I'm sorry, guys," he told his roommates. "I just don't feel safe here. I need to move out." His roommates understood. They were also still trying to process what had happened. Mark packed his things and found a new place to live, but the memory of the stranger in the attic stayed with him. He often checked his new home's attic and made sure all doors and windows were locked every night. The experience had taught him to be more cautious, but it also left him with a lingering fear that someone might be watching him again. The controlling roommate Emma was thrilled to move into her new apartment with Rachel. She had spent weeks searching for the perfect place and was happy to have found someone who seemed responsible and reliable. Rachel was older, worked a steady job, and gave off the impression of being well organized. This made Emma feel confident that their living arrangement would be smooth and drama-free. Little did she know, her excitement would soon turn into stress and frustration. At first, things seemed fine. Rachel was polite and even a bit helpful. She gave Emma tips on where to put her things in the kitchen and suggested some good deals at the local grocery store. Emma didn't think much of it and assumed Rachel was just being friendly. Emma had never lived with someone so particular, but she figured it might be nice to live with someone who had everything under control. Rachel's attention to detail seemed like a good balance to Emma's more laid-back personality. However, as the days turned into weeks, Rachel's behavior started to shift. What had seemed like friendly advice turned into constant instructions. Rachel started telling Emma how to organize her room, what brands of cleaning products to use, and even what foods she should and shouldn't buy. At first, Emma shrugged it off, thinking Rachel was just trying to make their shared space more comfortable. But soon, Rachel's suggestions became demands. Rachel established a set of house rules that she expected Emma to follow. These rules covered everything: when to use the kitchen, how long showers should be, and even what time Emma should turn off the lights in her room. Emma found it odd, but didn't want to start an argument. She tried to comply with most of Rachel's rules, thinking it was just part of living with someone new. After all, Emma didn't want to be a difficult roommate. But it didn't stop there. Rachel's rules became stricter, and her tone grew harsher. If Emma left a dish in the sink, Rachel would immediately confront her about it. If Emma forgot to take out the trash on her designated day, Rachel would lecture her as though she were a child. It felt less like living with a roommate and more like being micromanaged by a boss. Emma began to feel uneasy in her own home. Things escalated when Emma started to push back. One evening, Emma told Rachel that she didn't appreciate being told when to go to bed. She explained that she was an adult and could manage her own schedule. Rachel didn't take this well. She yelled at Emma, accusing her of being selfish and inconsiderate. Emma was stunned by Rachel's reaction. She had expected a calm discussion, but instead, Rachel's anger seemed to explode out of nowhere. From that point on, Rachel's behavior became even more controlling. Rachel started monitoring Emma's every move. She would comment on how much time Emma spent in the bathroom, how many snacks she ate, and how often she left the apartment. If Emma stayed out late, Rachel would send her a flurry of text messages, asking where she was and why she wasn't home yet. Emma felt suffocated. Her apartment, which was supposed to be her safe space, now felt like a prison. Emma tried to spend more time away from the apartment to avoid Rachel. She stayed at friends' houses, went out for long walks, and even started working late just to delay going home. But Rachel's controlling behavior didn't stop. When Emma wasn't home, Rachel would bombard her with texts and calls, demanding to know where she was and when she would be back. Emma started to feel anxious every time her phone buzzed, knowing it was probably another message from Rachel. The breaking point came one night when Emma returned home to find that Rachel had gone through her belongings. Rachel had decided that some of Emma's clothes and books were unnecessary and had thrown them away without asking. Among the items were Emma's favorite jacket and a book she had been reading since high school. Emma was furious and confronted Rachel, but Rachel dismissed her anger, saying she was just decluttering for the sake of the apartment. Emma realized she couldn't live like this anymore. The constant stress and lack of privacy were taking a toll on her mental health. She reached out to friends and family for support and began searching for a new place to live. Within a week, Emma had found a new apartment and arranged to move out. Rachel, of course, didn't take the news well. She yelled and accused Emma of abandoning her. But Emma stood her ground, knowing she needed to prioritize her own well-being. Even after Emma moved out, Rachel continued to harass her. She sent angry messages, called repeatedly, and even showed up at Emma's new apartment unannounced. Emma eventually had to block Rachel's number and threaten legal action to get her to stop. It was a difficult and draining experience, but Emma was relieved to finally be free of Rachel's control. Looking back, Emma realized how important it is to set boundaries and recognize red flags early on. While she was glad to have escaped the toxic living situation, she wished she had acted sooner. The experience taught her to trust her instincts and prioritize her own comfort and happiness. Now, Emma lives in a peaceful apartment with a kind and respectful roommate, and she couldn't be happier. Emma's story is a reminder that not all roommates are compatible, and that's okay. It's important to stand up for yourself and take action when a living situation becomes unhealthy. No one deserves to feel trapped or controlled in their own home. By sharing her experience, Emma hopes to encourage others to recognize their own worth and never settle for less than they deserve in any living arrangement. The dangerous obsession Jake's life seemed pretty normal when he first moved into a new apartment with his roommate, Tom. Tom appeared to be just an ordinary guy, friendly, easygoing, and someone Jake could relate to. They quickly discovered a shared love for video games, and most of their evenings were spent battling it out in front of the TV. Jake thought he had lucked out with such a chill roommate. But what seemed like a simple and harmless friendship took a strange and unsettling turn over time. In the beginning, Jake enjoyed Tom's company. They often laughed at each other's jokes, stayed up late playing their favorite games, and shared takeout meals. Jake found it refreshing to have someone who shared his interests. It was easy to overlook the small things, like how Tom always seemed overly interested in Jake's schedule, or how he wanted to tag along everywhere Jake went. At first, Jake thought Tom was just being friendly and trying to build a good roommate bond. However, as time passed, Jake began to notice little signs that something wasn't quite right. Tom's behavior became more intense. He would insist on spending almost every moment together, whether it was gaming, grocery shopping, or even running mundane errands. If Jake made plans with other friends or chose to spend some time alone, Tom's mood would change. He would sulk or give Jake guilt trips, making comments like, "I thought we were closer than that." At first, Jake brushed it off as Tom being overly sensitive, but soon it became exhausting. The situation escalated when Jake started to notice how much Tom seemed to depend on him. Tom began to rely on Jake for everything: advice, entertainment, and even emotional support. It felt like Tom's world revolved around him, and Jake started feeling trapped. He'd never dealt with someone so clingy before, and it made him uncomfortable. But Jake didn't want to confront Tom too harshly. He didn't want to hurt his feelings or make things awkward in their shared apartment. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Jake came home to a shocking surprise. The walls of their apartment were now covered in photos of the two of them. There were dozens of pictures, all carefully arranged in frames and collages. Some of the pictures were from their gaming nights, others from casual outings, and a few that Jake didn't even know had been taken. The whole thing felt bizarre and invasive. It wasn't just the sheer number of photos that unnerved Jake. It was the fact that Tom had done all of this without even mentioning it to him. Trying to stay calm, Jake asked Tom about the photos. Tom laughed it off and said, "I just wanted to make the place feel more like home. Doesn't it look great?" Jake forced a smile and nodded, but deep down he felt uneasy. This wasn't normal behavior, and it left him questioning what was going on in Tom's head. Still, Jake decided not to push the issue further. He hoped that ignoring it would make things settle down. But things didn't settle down. In fact, they got worse. A few weeks later, Jake started dating someone named Emily. She was smart, funny, and the kind of person Jake had been hoping to meet for a long time. Their relationship was new, but Jake was excited about it. However, Tom's reaction to the news was far from supportive. Instead of being happy for Jake, Tom became cold and distant. He started making sarcastic comments about Jake's relationship, saying things like, "I guess I'm not good enough company for you anymore," or "Don't forget about the people who've always been here for you." It didn't stop there. Tom's behavior grew more erratic. He would interrupt Jake's dates with Emily, barging into the room under the pretense of needing something trivial. He would text and call Jake constantly, even when he knew Jake was with her. At first, Jake tried to downplay it, explaining to Emily that Tom was just struggling to adjust. But as time went on, it became clear that this wasn't just jealousy. It was something far more concerning. One night, while Jake and Emily were out for dinner, Tom showed up uninvited. He claimed it was a coincidence, but his awkward excuses didn't add up. Emily was visibly uncomfortable, and Jake realized he needed to set boundaries. When he confronted Tom about it later, Tom brushed it off, saying he was just looking out for him. Jake didn't buy it, but he didn't know how to handle the situation. Confronting Tom felt risky. Jake worried about how he might react. The breaking point came one evening when Jake returned home to find a journal left open on the couch. He recognized it as Tom's. At first, he hesitated to look, feeling it would be an invasion of privacy. But something about the situation felt off, and curiosity got the better of him. What he read sent chills down his spine. The journal was filled with pages of detailed notes and plans, all centered around Jake. There were descriptions of his daily routines, his interactions with Emily, and even strategies Tom had come up with to sabotage their relationship. One entry read, "If I can make her leave, Jake will finally see that I'm the only one who really cares about him." Jake's heart raced as he flipped through the pages. This wasn't just clingy behavior anymore. It was obsessive and dangerous. He knew he couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. That night, Jake packed a bag and stayed with a friend. The next day, he began the process of finding a new place to live. He also filed for a restraining order against Tom, explaining the situation to the authorities. Even after moving out, Jake couldn't shake the fear and unease that Tom had left behind. For weeks, he looked over his shoulder, half expecting Tom to show up unannounced. Emily supported him through the ordeal, but it took a long time for Jake to feel safe again. The experience left him wary of trusting people too quickly and taught him the importance of setting boundaries early on. Years later, Jake still thought about Tom from time to time. He wondered what had driven him to act the way he did and whether he had ever sought help. While Jake had moved on with his life, the memory of his former roommate served as a constant reminder to trust his instincts and prioritize his own well-being. Looking back, he realized that some red flags should never be ignored, no matter how harmless they might seem at first.